Well, you guessed it. It was Yeoman. He'd come all the way from Brooklyn for this the Ethan opening. Uh, he he was aware that things were going along, but he had not really been much of a part of it since he had left Richland. But there he was, and Violet didn't know he was coming. She was all excited. She didn't think he would come, but he was excited, and he was excited too about how good things looked, and he was going to get together with some of his buddies back from high school to celebrate together this event, because after all, they're the ones that had really got it going. So he he didn't stay long there with them. He met Lance and he said hi, hi to Elaine. He called her Mandy. They were family after all, and then he went, but he asked if it'd be all right if he'd come for supper and stay the night. It's his mother's. And she, of course, Violet was just really excited. It meant Lance was going to have to sleep on a couch another night, but that was no problem. So off they went their various ways. And the threesome, the Violet and Mandy and Elaine and Lance, they didn't stay much longer. They headed back because this was going to be a very, very big day. And this was just the start of the day. They wanted to get back. Violet wanted them to get back in time for lunch, which they did. Lance didn't walk very much. Mostly he rode, just for time's sake. He could get his exercise other ways. And they got back. They had lunch, and it was then it had been part of Violet's plan all along to take a drive. Partly to get Lance out there around, not stuck in the house. And she thought she knew a good place. She often took visitors when they'd come to Richland on a real short drive up to a hill called Boxwood Hill Cemetery. Now, they weren't going to see the dead. Well, in a way, there's famous people buried up there, but rather up there was a view of the city. And at night, this was the middle of the day, but at night especially, it was pretty, Violet thought. Anyway, she loved her city, and she liked to take her visitors up there and drive them around a little bit. And they just didn't drive around. They would stop and walk, because Lance, this part of the plan, was Lance could be up there and do some walking, and there were a lot of benches. So anyway, that again, they didn't stay there long. This was a full day. They headed back, and then back at Astolat Street, Elaine, busied herself about getting ready. This was going to be her first day on the job, and so she left well before 4 o'clock, because she wanted to get there around 4 o'clock, maybe even a little early. She wondered what to wear, because she hadn't been given much advice on that. She'd be wearing an apron anyway, she figured. She wore jeans and a peasant blouse, and she looked so cute. Lance said as much, and her G-maw as well. And off she went, all excited. Now, Lance, for his part, he was tired. He got on the exercise bike a little bit, and now already he could make it around a couple of pedals. It hurt, but he could make it around, and he worked on that for a while. Then he lay down on the couch and went to sleep. He rested. Well, I can go on, just kind of, these aren't critical happenings at this point, but Yeoman showed up in time for supper, and they had a nice supper, and he celebrated with his friends, and they celebrated more like adults than back when they were kids. No one was getting drunk or anything like that, but they had a lot of reason to celebrate, and that was lovely. Anyway, after they ate, then conversation turned from one thing to another. Yeoman was fascinated by Lance's story, and Lance, for his part, he was fascinated with Yeoman, because Yeoman had nearly been an architect, or in a way was, and so they had a lot in common to talk about. Here would be the time to give the whole story about how they, driven mostly by the enthusiasm of young people, the ethno had come to be. But I don't think I'm going to take the time. I mean, it would be make a whole story in itself. The fact that Mennonites came into town in horse and buggies. There was, I think, 3 of them, loaded with working men, and horse and buggy. This is in Richland, and they would not normally have done that, but they regarded it as sort of a charity to help these city people out, because they knew about setting up buildings like this one was going to be. But anyway, I'm getting into it, and that would be a long story. And then for his part, Yeoman, he wanted to know more about Wedge. He knew a little bit about Wedge because his mom, Violet, had told him some, much more than, say, Elaine really didn't even know Wedge existed. So they talked for a while, and then when conversation slowed, Violet had a suggestion. She thought, they were the not Violet so much, but the other two were going to go into the world of their cell phones, and all that. But she said she'd seen that there was going to be a whole series, a month-long series on TV of Shakespeare plays made into movies. And she thought, the first one is not a play, it's a movie called Shakespeare in Love. And she thought it was Tira is the one who had told her about that, had seen it, and said that the costumes and the set were just fabulous, and that Violet should see it sometime, and it was going to be on. So she said, "Do you want to watch it?" And they said, "Sure, why not? Better than sitting here alone looking at our cell phones." So they did, and enjoyed it immensely. And boy, they were right. The costumes, the set, the 2 men got more into the set, I think, both being sort of would-be architects. It was great. And when it got toward the end, they watched it to the end, and when it ended, Violet said, "Isn't that something at the end? I wonder what my father would have thought." Because right there at the end, the character of Viola, remember that was his favorite play, was Twelfth Night, character Viola, the character she was named after. Viola is married to a Wessex, and she ends up being washed ashore alone on a beach in Virginia. What are the odds of that?